Love is a very strong emotion, and when relationships break down, it can prompt some people to do insane things for revenge. In many cases, it's simply an already disturbed individual lashing out at someone they once claimed to have loved. Number 5. It was just 3 a.m. on January 4th, 2019, when patrol officers spotted a car speeding through the streets of Liverpool, doing 3 times the speed limit. The car ran red lights, ignored stop signs, and went the wrong way down one-way streets. According to officers, it was only a miracle that the driver didn't collide with anybody. After a high-speed chase, the driver crashed and the car became stuck between bollards and a parked car. But he tried to continue the chase. Police officers eventually tasered him. He was found to be well over the drinking and driving limit. This was Michael Woolvine, and he had just violently assaulted his ex-girlfriend in her own home. Woolvine was very drunk when he broke into his ex-partner's home. He stood at the side of her bed, watching her sleep, before attacking the young woman, whose name was Samantha Eustace. He beat the woman he once claimed to have loved and accused her of cheating on him, which doesn't seem to have been the case. At one point, he smashed a J20 bottle over her head and tried to strangle her. Samantha's daughter watched on, helpless, begging Woolvine to stop. Thankfully, neighbors heard Samantha's screams for Woolvine to get off and tried to intervene. After Samantha had passed out due to the attack, Woolvine went to address the banging on the door. He was dressed in just a sweater and his underwear, but it was clear something violent had just happened. The evidence was on his hands. One of the neighbors tried to pin Woolvine down while the others called police. Woolvine fought back, gouging at the man's eyes and trying to bite him before fleeing in Samantha's car. This was when the high-speed chase began. Thankfully, Samantha survived, and her statement about the attack was read out in court before Woolvine was sentenced. She and her daughter both had nightmares about Woolvine for months after the attack, and were still suffering from night terrors when the sentencing took place. Samantha added that it was going to be a long time before she could trust anyone again. Woolvine had a history of violent attacks and had previously been arrested for attacking another ex-partner. He pleaded guilty and was handed a 15-year prison sentence, but the consequences of his actions will live on much longer for his victims. Number 4. Jodi Ann Arias and Travis Alexander met at a conference in Las Vegas in 2006 and immediately hit it off. Despite living in different states, the two were madly in love. Travis introduced her to Mormonism, and she converted and quickly became obsessed with Travis. What could be mistaken for simple enthusiasm about a new relationship? Travis's friends were unsure about Arias. A few months after they started dating, one friend told Travis she was afraid they were going to find him chopped up in Arias's freezer. The romance faded pretty quickly for Travis, and they decided to end the relationship in June of 2007. But Arias wouldn't let go. She threatened to take her own life if Travis stopped contacting her, and tried to break into his house. Travis tried to move on and dated other women, but that only left him with more anger from Arias. She would slash his tires and stalk him on and offline. For some reason, the two continued to share explicit images to one another over the next 2 years. It's not clear how much of this was one-sided though. In the end, Travis had definitely come to see what his friends had been fearing all along. He knew his crazy ex-girlfriend was obsessed with him, and told them half as a joke to not be surprised if they found him passed away one day. The joke would become disturbingly true in June of 2008. 5 days after he was last seen, friends went into Travis's home to find his body in his shower. He had been violently attacked with a blade and seemed to have passed away some days earlier. When friends contacted police, they told them to investigate Arias. Arias would at first claim she was in California, where she lived at the time. That story quickly fell apart when police discovered a camera with images timestamped June 4th. She later admitted that she had come to Travis's home and claimed he had invited her. The two engaged in explicit acts which were captured on camera. Again, she said it was his idea. One of the photos, now famous, was that of Travis in the shower, Arias reflected in his eyes. The next day, Arias went to meet another lover, who noted that she had small bandages on her hands. Her next story was that someone had broken into her house and claimed Travis's life. Then, eventually, she confessed that she was responsible, but claimed it was self-defense. This was the story she stuck with when the case went to court. However, the jury didn't believe it, given the nature of the wounds that Travis had suffered, and she was found guilty. Number 3. While Alexa and similar devices can make people's lives much easier, they also have become a new way for crazy ex-partners to torment their former loved ones. An unnamed man and his new girlfriend had returned to his home in Lincolnshire for what they thought would be a relaxing evening together. Little did they know that they were being watched by Philippa Copleston Warren, the man's crazy ex-girlfriend. Copleston Warren had hacked into the device while more than 100 miles away and used it to watch the couple and turn the lights on and off. Then, like a twisted ghost in a horror film, she told her ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend to take her things and leave. The situation was so terrifying, the poor woman was driven to tears and fled from the house. But Copleston Warren's torment hadn't ended yet. She gained access to her ex-boyfriend's Facebook account and posted private images of him, as well as posting that he had fathered 2 children out of wedlock. The unnamed man hadn't even realized the photos had been posted until Copleston Warren sent him a text message suggesting he take them down. But she had changed the password to his account, so he was unable to do so. The images were only taken down after his friends flagged them to Facebook. By this point, they had apparently gone viral, reaching as far as Pakistan. The fallout impacted the man's work, and in a statement in court, he said that it had ripped his world apart. Copleston Warren continued to harass her ex-boyfriend and boasted in WhatsApp chats with friends about the things she had done to torment him until she was finally arrested for her actions. Number 2. Nadia Viola had been in a relationship with Jose Marcondes for about a month before she decided that it wasn't working for her. She ended the relationship, which was when Marcondes started acting unstable. Marcondes was a Brazilian journalist and businessman who had tried to make himself into somewhat of a celebrity with little success. He ran for election as a local governor in 2014 and got just 0.1% of the vote. He tried again to run for local council in 2020 and again received a pitiful number of votes. Not long after this, he met Nadia, a pharmacist, mother of 1, who was 13 years younger than him. They dated for a short while, but Nadia broke it off. Marcondes refused to accept that the relationship was over and tried to insist that they get back together. When Nadia made it clear she had no interest in being his partner again, Marcondes took things into his own hands. He purchased a weapon and made a short video demonstrating how to load it and the proper way to use it. In hindsight, police say he had already made up his mind of what he wanted to do to his ex-girlfriend. On June 28, 2021, he went to the pharmacy where he worked. Security cameras from across the street captured Marcondes lingering outside, waiting for a customer to leave. He wanted to make sure that his victim was alone. When the customer did leave, he went inside. Disturbing footage from the pharmacy showed the two to have a conversation before Marcondes convinced Nadia to talk in her office. He then took a seat at her desk and their conversation turned into an argument. Not long after, Marcondes pulled out the weapon and pulled the trigger. Nadia was hit 3 times in the chest, shoulder, mouth, and hand, but luckily she survived. She dragged herself out of the office and through the pharmacy. The noise had already attracted passers-by, who helped Nadia escape. By the time police and ambulances arrived, Marcondes had already turned the weapon on himself. He was still alive when he was taken to the hospital, but would pass away hours later. Nadia also underwent surgery and was released a few days later, hoping to now make a fresh start and put the terrifying experience behind her. Number 1. The tragic case of Shanna Grice is one that should be used as a warning to police around the world about how terrifying crazy exes can be. Shanna was just 19 years old when her ex-boyfriend took her life and tried to set her body on fire. 5 months earlier, she was issued a fine for reporting the harassment to police. Michael Lane already had a history of abuse and harassing young women. One woman would later tell police he had harassed her for 10 years, sending her pictures of her own bedroom window at night and texts to say that he was watching her. But in 2016, when Lane was 27 years old, his dark past hadn't come to light. Lane had met Shanna the year before at work, and the two became romantically involved. Shanna was already in a long-term relationship when Lane pressured her into breaking up with her boyfriend after Lane became obsessed with her. Shanna's relationship with Lane wouldn't last long though. At this point, it seemed she hadn't officially broken it off with Lane, but she would make it pretty clear she didn't want to be near him, clear to everyone but Lane and the police. The harassment started in February when Lane sent her flowers unsolicited and left a message on her boyfriend's car. The next month, police were called when Lane pulled Shanna's hair and tried to grab her phone. Shanna told police about the previous incident and was in distress, but Lane showed police text messages that allegedly proved they were in a relationship. For some reason, this was enough for police to determine Shanna wasn't at risk, and she was fined $90 for wasting the police time. In July, he stole the back door key to Shanna's home and crept inside while he thought she was sleeping. She was actually awake and hid under the covers until Lane left, not sure what else she could do. This obsessive, crazy behavior prompted her to contact police again, but they did nothing more than warn him to stay away from her. By this point, Shanna was beginning to lose hope that she would be taken seriously. On August 23, 2016, the two met at a hotel. There had been other incidents of harassment by now, including phone calls, which were just heavy breathing, and a tracking device placed in Shanna's car. Some she told police about, but she also told friends about some other incidents that she hadn't reported, because she worried police would think that she was wasting their time again. At the hotel, Shanna told Lane that it was over. He would tell friends he would make her pay for what she did. 2 days later, he took Shanna's life. In March of 2017, he was handed a life sentence with the minimum term of 25 years. The police involved in this case were investigated. One was found guilty of gross misconduct. The officer that fined Shanna was only found guilty of misconduct and would defend himself by highlighting a message from Shanna to Lane, which she signed off with kisses and said what had been going on for months before Shanna's passing wasn't harassment. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.